when you got instruction from the experts? I request
Maybe I will
Gopal
also.
sir to take over the session.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So, very good morning to one and all. At the outset, on behalf of Vision Excellence Consulting Private Limited, and on behalf of the speakers, myself, Dr. Gopal Sivakumar, and Ramakrishnan Vaidyanathan, we wholeheartedly thank Arjun College of Technology for giving us this wonderful opportunity to conduct a 2-hour session on hypothesis testing for researchers. And also, I would like to welcome as well as thank all the participants of today's program for coming forward online and then deciding to spend 2 hours with us. So with that, welcome. I once again would like to pass on certain instruction which some of them may be already Dr. Kumar, the principal of Arjun College of Technology, has pointed out, and after which the session will commence as per the agenda. Dr. Ramakrishnan will be giving the overview, and then it will come back to me. I'll be introducing you the concept of hypothesis testing, and then we both of us together will be doing certain activities. This program is not going to be a one-way just program like a regular online. It's going to be a very interactive, so that we'll make it more and more meaningful and more useful, and going to be a win-win for all of us, right? So that last session is going to be, both of us will be simultaneously doing, and then there will be a lot of interaction during that particular session. And then as for any program, particularly the online program, the energy is drawn from the way the participants are involving themselves in the program. So I strongly recommend all the participants to support the program by way of muting your audio as well as keeping your video closed, so that the transmission goes very effectively and all the participants are able to receive the audio as well as video clearly. That is one main request. Another thing is, whenever the speakers, either me or Dr. Ramakrishnan or the organizer, ask you to respond, maybe we may ask you to type a few words in the chat box, or maybe some links will be shared. You kindly listen to them and then respond as and when such a request comes to you. And then finally, during the activities also, if there are any inputs needed from you, please do not hesitate to provide us. And as well as you can post your questions continuously in the chat box, and then often we will also be giving you a chance to talk to us. Please make utilize of all those opportunities and try to have a very healthy and interactive session. And, so definitely when we follow these things, the program is going to be a very, very successful one. We have planned certain objectives, outcomes, and we'll make sure the objectives will be met and outcomes are going to be attained, right? So I, with this just few words, I request Dr. V. Ramakrishnan to give a overview of a program, and then I'll come and
Thank you very
discuss.
much. Thank you very much. I don't want to take much time. Even though I'm an old man, given a chance, I'll keep on speaking. I just want to tell you what is the overview of hypothesis testing. We said hypothesis testing for researchers. Are you all the researchers? Some of you might have already completed research, right? Then do you require this hypothesis testing still? Hypothesis testing is required for all, right from the beginning. Even people at home, it is required, because it is just a decision making. How are we making the decision? That's a question. Is there a logical method to make the decision? That is a question. These are all the questions will be answered. Once you know the logical method of arriving at the answer, then you are a master of this problem solving technique. Therefore, I would request you to kindly be patient till 2 hours, till you get the feel of it. Once you get the feel of it, you will love it. I'm sure that you will love it. Love to learn more mathematics. In mathematics, I used to say that a curve will dance like to the tune of my wanting. If I want it to go to the right, to the left, to the up, to the down, to change its shape, expand horizontally, compress horizontally, expand vertically, compress vertically. Everything can be done just in 4 parameters. Similarly, the hypothesis testing, whatever be your problem in the universe, please note in the universe, I bet in the universe, any problem that you get can be simplified to an hypothesis question. What is that hypothesis question? What is the answer? The answer also is not digi-dodgy. It is just a simple answer, straightforward answer, one word answer. You are right or you are not right. Can I go ahead or can't go ahead? Should I stop or should I proceed? These are the type of answers that you will have. Therefore, it will be very easy to know all types of questions in the world. If you can convert and then use it and then decide the answer, will you not be interested in it? You will be, certainly. And Gopal Shivakumar is an interesting speaker. He's not like me. He will not be telling the same thing. But only thing is, I will repeat whatever he said. Be patient because I will be using mathematics. Before that, he will tell you all the jokes and all the interesting part of hypothesis testing. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity, Gopal Shivakumar and Arjun College of Technology. Over to Gopal Shivakumar. Bye.
Thank you, sir. I will share my screen. Give me a few seconds. Yeah. Yeah. Hope my screen is visible. My audio is audible, right? So once again, welcome all of you for this session on hypothesis testing. Thanks to Arjun College of Technology, Coimbatore. So these are a short profile of the speakers today, myself and Dr. V. Ramakrishnan. We both are into process improvement consulting. We do hypothesis testing and tools like design of experiments extensively while helping our customers solve their problems. So as far as today's session is concerned, we have planned certain outcomes which are called the learning outcomes. So this is what I have planned it for you in my first session. It's going to be for about 45 minutes to 1 hour. So you will come to know at the end of my talk what exactly is hypothesis testing and what are sampling risk and sampling errors. What exactly is null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis? What do they mean in hypothesis testing, or what do they mean in our real life? And what is alpha and p-value? Often we use these terms whenever we discuss about hypothesis testing. Understanding on alpha and p-value are very, very important. So you will get a good clarity on those things. And also I will be introducing you about the basic category types of data, which are continuous as well as discrete data, because the whole idea of hypothesis testing, the selection of hypothesis testing, is essentially based on the kind of data we are working on. So your understanding about hypothesis tests or the types of data will help you select the correct mathematical test, that is a hypothesis test, and you can take a correct decision. And finally, I will also give you some hints on how can you actually select the right hypothesis testing for your project, for your problem, for your research, right? So this is the outcomes planned. Okay, so before I start talking about the example I have given, so I'm sure most of you, maybe all of you, are already employed, maybe a faculty member, maybe a researcher. Some of you may be working for an industry, right? So whatever is the profession you belong to, this hypothesis testing is a must-do practice, because in our profession, our ultimate intention is we wanted to help our customers in our business. We wanted to help our organization grow. So in that process, what we do is we basically try to solve our customer's problem, try to solve some of the problem which our business faces. So in that process of solving our customers or business problem, we'll have to take important decisions. Because if we do not take the right decision, then we may fail in our effort to solve the customer's problem. So all our decisions have to be correct. So what is the guarantee that all the decision you make when you are in a particular mode of solving your customer's problem, solving your business problem? So how confident you are with your decision? So that is very important. If your decision, the chance of your decision going right, if it is very high, that means what you are doing is really a good job. Suppose if the chance of your decision going wrong, if that is going to be very high, that means your job as a professional is not that much appreciated. So instead of just following a trial and error methodology, what is trial and error methodology? You will repeat different types of solving a problem, different procedure you follow, and then you will get different solution. That is what we call it as trial and error. At some point of time you may get the right solution, then you will stop the procedure. But that's not fair. That won't be appreciated always, because you will be wasting a lot of resources, including your time. So another option, the better option, is systematically trying to solve the problem. The moment you wanted to solve your problem systematically, then you should be a master in hypothesis testing. So you are doing your things right at the first time. The decision what you take at the very first time is going to be the right decision. So for that, this hypothesis testing will be very, very, very helpful. So let us get into the topic. And one more important point I wanted to convey is, we all know the famous equation, mathematical equation, y is equal to f of x. We often recommend our clients and participants to use this equation in everything they are doing. Let us say you are solving your customer's problem or your business problem. The problem is your y. It may be the company's sales started coming down. Why is that coming down? There could be multiple factors, which are called the X factors. Why is just one, which is the sales, which is coming down? The pain is sales started coming down. And then the business needs some solution. And you as a solution provider, you are first trying to find out all the factors, which are the X. And all the factors may not be the reason for the drop in sales. Only very few, 1 or 2, or maybe sometimes 3 or 4, may be contributing majorly for the drop in sales. Those factors are called critical factors. And validating that critical factors. What is validating? Creating evidence. Evidence with the data. That is called validation. And this hypothesis testing is a validation procedure. A particular factor is critical or not. Yes, I prove it with the data. And that procedure is hypothesis testing. So with that brief idea about how hypothesis testing is helpful in your profession, in your problem solving approach, right? Let me get inside. So let us first understand, before trying to understand hypothesis testing, let us first understand what is a claim. What is a claim? A claim means you state something as true, but you are not very sure. You don't have any evidence for that. That is what is called as claim. And when I validate your claim, I will always refer for certain data, evidence. And if that evidence supports, then I will accept your claim. If that evidence is not supporting, then I will reject your claim. This simple procedure is hypothesis testing, right? Let me give an example from all sectors, maybe from a school environment, then a college environment, then an industrial environment, then our personal life. Let us consider a few claims, and then let us try to understand what exactly is hypothesis testing. See here, a school principal reports that students in her school score an average of 70%. The school principal claims the school standard is 70%. If I admit my kid in that school, and the principal says my kid will also likely to score 70% marks. And the previous study about the school or the previous data of the school says that the standard deviation is 5 marks, right? And I wanted to test the trueness of this statement. If my testing gives me answer like yes, the principal statement is true, what I do, I will decide to admit my kid. If my study says yes, the principal statement is not true, then what I decide is I will not admit my child. This is a case of hypothesis testing. Here how do I conduct this testing? I simply talk to some of the students in the school. Maybe I'll take a sample, because I cannot go for a full census, which is always very difficult, time consuming, costlier, and a lot of effort needed, and then I may not be accurate. I will prove that if we go for a full census, 100% inspections are not always effective. So better thing is taking a sample. If I just take a small sample, let's say 30 students, the school contains about 300 students, and I just take 30 students sample, and I just ask them, what is their score, average score? And then all the 30 marks, I take an average, and the average gives me some number, maybe 65, maybe 75. And now I will compare this average with the claim statement. What is claim statement? Principal said the average score will be 70. However, I do have a set data now. I do created an evidence now. I will compare my data with the school population. Whenever you compare a sample with the population, that is what we call it as is a test. That is what we call it as is a test. Here it is specifically called one sample is a test. A sample is compared with the population, and certain parameters, statistical parameters about the population is available in our hand. That is the school population, school average score. The population mean is 70. That is known to us. The population standard deviation is 5. That is also known to us. So the option is one sample is a test. And so this is a case. We will be discussing this in detail with some real data, and we will discuss that as we progress. And next example from a college. Let us say a college principal claims that 80% of the students gets campus placement. It's a fantastic claim. So we having our child ready to join a college after +2. So we look for all these kind of statements. But then we general tendency is what we do. We simply believe. Simply believing means our decision is just based on opinions. That is a trial and error method. Whenever you believe just opinion and then not have enough evidence, then that means you are very prone to trial and error method. But if you really wanted to be very much cautious in your decision while admitting your child, you really have to verify this claim. That means we are using hypothesis testing there also, right? So here 80% of the students gets campus placement. How do I verify that? Right. So now the past record as a parent is not available with me. Let's say it's not available with me. I do not know what exactly is the population mean, what exactly is the population standard deviation and all. In that case, I will be running a test called one sample t-test. Once again, the process is same, but then it follows a different. Earlier it was a standard normal distribution. Now it is going to be a t-distribution, and this testing is called one sample t-test. The only difference is the statistical parameters about the population is unknown to me. So this is a case with a college. Let me take an industrial scenario. You can take any industry. Here again, I have just to make it very easier and to get you connected easily. Again, I took a simple example. A dietitian selects a random sample of 13 bottles of cooking oil. Cooking oil contains some amount of saturated fat, and there is a label saying that the saturated fat is 15%. The label claims, there is a claim, saturated fat content in the cooking oil is only 15%. Now, as a consumer of that particular cooking oil, I just wanted to understand whether the claim is correct or not. So what all I can do is, I cannot go for a full census. I will not be able to have access to all the products made by the company. They may be making and then selling it across the globe, millions of units. So going for a full census is absolutely impossible. What all I can do is I can take some samples, maybe 13 bottles or 30 bottles of cooking oil, and then send it to some lab, and then I'll make a judgment about the climate. And so certain information is available. See here, previous research indicates that the population standard deviation is 2.6%. Since the population parameter is known to us, once again, you can very well handle this situation using a hypothesis testing called one sample is a test. And in our personal life, see here, your investment advisor proposes you a monthly income investment plan. A financial advisor comes and says, sir, you invest in such a plan. This plan will give you a monthly payout of say 18,000 rupees, assured income of 18,000 rupees a month. And I'm sorry, you actually looking for an investment where you get at least 18,000 per month as the income. And your advisor immediately says, yes, sir, you please take up this particular scheme. If you invest, definitely your income will be 19,000 rupees a month. How do I validate? How do I believe that advisor's statement? Again, it's a question of, creating evidence and taking a decision. Again, it's a case of hypothesis testing. And in this case, what all I can do is for the advisor's statement, the financial advisor statement, what I can ask for is ask for certain evidence. So he says, last 300 months, the scheme has given a particular kind of return, and which is average of 19,000 rupees a month, and with a standard deviation of 7,000 rupees. So what is this case? It's only a sample of 300 months available. The entire history is not known. So only a sample and the claim is available. And so it again falls under one sample t-test. So I think with this few examples, you could have understood when and where hypothesis testing will come into.
1 second, what happened? What is the result test? What is t-test and all? I have already answered that. We will all be discussing that. By the end of the session, you will master it. That too, particularly after Ramakrishnan's speech. So this is a mathematics. So you will always have doubts. But please follow whatever he says, because otherwise you will miss valuable information. He has discussed 3 different types of problems in 3 different fields. So please follow him, and whatever queries you have, raise it in the chat box, or everything will be answered. I assure you that every single question will be answered. If not answered, you can raise it again orally by the end of the session. Thank you. Please be muted and listen to him carefully. Follow him. Everything will be answered. Thank you. Please continue.
I'm happy that participants are started asking questions right from the beginning. I really love such scenarios, right? It's very good. But then now the objective of these slides is just only to help you understand a situation where hypothesis testing can come into picture and help you. But what hypothesis testing and how will you do it? We have to go in detail. I cannot just answer it in a single line, then which will not be useful also. I will be giving you a set of data. Maybe I'll take a sample, and then the student's mark will be available. I'll show you, and then I will run the test, and then I will help you how, as a problem solver, a decision maker, you will arrive on the solution, right? That will happen for sure. Your question will be answered. And now before that, there is another interesting story I wanted to share. The Maggi ban. So Maggi in the year of 2014, they lost their market share, 80% of the market share. Why? What happened? Because Maggi was making a claim in that bright yellow color packet. They mentioned no added MSG, monosodium glutamate, right? It's a chemical which adds flavor to maybe increases the flavor of Maggi. But the statement is no added MSG. That has created all the problems for Maggi. Actually, when a food inspector in his casual visit, he saw that statement in March 2014 in Delhi. Food inspector is Sanjay Singh from UP. So he really wanted to test whether the state claim is correct or not, right? Because from consumer point of view, someone has to test. So he did that testing. He took away a few samples from that retail shop, and then sent it to a lab. And then he found there is MSG content in it. That means the claim is wrong. The claim should be rejected. I cannot accept the Maggie's claim, no added MSG, because there is an MSG. The sample has proved it. And so what he did in April 2014, he sent it to another laboratory at Gorakhpur, and that also confirmed that particular sample of Maggie noodles had MSG, that monosodium glutamate. And what happened in June 2014? Samples of Maggie noodles were then again sent to Central Food Laboratory in Kolkata, because the Nestle India, the manufacturer of Maggie, were not really concerned about the steps taken. So they were just keeping quiet and not responding. So another good number of samples were sent to the laboratory at Kolkata, and that result also read like this: MSG present, monosodium glutamate is present. And also they checked the lead content in that particular packet, which is found to be 17.2 ppm parts per million, which is 1,000 times more than the requirement, right? And so the result is positive. The hypothesis test result is positive. And so Maggie has to go for a recall. You know recall? Recall is calling back all the products you have in your market, which is the worst thing a company can face. The highest cost of poor quality a company can face is product recall. It happened to many companies. And one such thing is Maggie. Even Toyota did that mistake, isn't it? Even Apple did that mistake. Samsung did that mistake. It happens sometimes. So if you are not systematic, and if you do not run a process which will not allow your product to fail at the hands of the customer, then the results will be things like this. So what happened? The executive vice president, the Fikara of Nestle India Private Limited, he has to recall. He formed a team. He recalled all the product, not just a few. 38,000 tons of Maggie packets were recalled, collected back, and then he burnt it across 11 cement plants in the country. Imagine the quantum of money wasted. And most importantly, the brand image is completely spoiled. Your market share is down. And now they are trying to recapture. So this is because they are not systematic in their approach. Whatever you are doing, please be systematic. Whatever decisions you are taking, whatever claim you are making, please have enough evidence. Otherwise, you will have to face these type of consequences, be it whatever. In your business, or maybe even if you are doing a research, please adhere to all these things. So now, what is hypothesis testing? It is nothing but a procedure of evaluating two mutually exclusive statements. In the Maggie example, the claim is no added MSG. No added MSG. That is the claim. And whether the claim is true or not, I have a procedure. I take a sample and then send it, decide a particular parameter, and then I test that parameter in the sample and compare it with the claim, and then I take a decision. So such a decision-making procedure is hypothesis testing, where a claim about a population parameter is tested for its trueness using the sample data. I only take the sample, and a parameter about the population is tested using the sample characteristics. This procedure is called hypothesis testing. So it's basically a decision-making procedure in which the claim about the population parameter, right, is tested for its trueness. I hope you understand what is hypothesis testing. And why is that we believe in the samples? Because I already mentioned, because going for full census is not always possible. It's not always effective. Read the statement, 100% inspections or 80% effective. Sometimes we do have some face such experience. Let's say we are buying a product from an electrical shop, maybe a LED bulb or something. It says 100% tested. But then when I buy and then put it in my house, it will not work properly. Then what is the meaning of 100% tested? So 100% inspections are not always effective. In fact, a study says that are only 80% effective. Why do you do 100% inspection? You are not having a capable process. You yourself not confident about your process. And so what happens? And so you doubt your process. And so you do a lot of inspection. So the best thing is have a capable process, believe in your process and take only samples and then take a decision. That is the best way. So there is a small activity for all of you. I think my screen is visible. Can you just go through the screen and find out the number of F's in it? And then if you feel that the number of F's is say 30, please type it in the chat box. Just take 1 minute or 2 minutes and then try to give me an answer to that. The task is you need to find out the number of F's in this slide. Just go ahead. 1 minute for the participants. If you are done, you can type in the chat box. Participants, just go through the slide and whatever number of F's you are able to count, type it in the chat box. Am I getting some response? If you are done, please. Yeah, thank you. The first response came. Saudi Raja says 30 and Padma Priya K says 25. I need few more answers. And Mr.
Yes.
Bugund says 26. 26. Okay. So a lot of different answers started coming up. That means my claim is correct. 100% inspection or only 80% effective. You have, what you did is 100% inspection. You have physically, I mean, literally you have gone through each and every letter in the slide. And then you have found some number. And then you are not able to come out with a unique answer. There is a 30, there is a 26, there is a 28. And if I keep on giving you more time, there will be more different answers. That means 100% inspections are not 100% effective always. So the best way is take a sample and then try to arrive on a decision based on the sample, right? So that is why sampling comes into picture. That is why we do not go for the full population study and most of the time take decisions based on the sample. But the moment you understand you are going to take decision based on the sample, so sample also will have some risk because you are not actually auditing all the population. You only take a sample. What is the guarantee that your predictions from the sample can be correct? There is also a chance because saying that 100% I am confident just with a sample, that means you are not making sense. Always when you take decisions based on the sample, you are prone to have some uncertainty in your decision. So that you need to understand. See, often we do that. I can come to this all these factors one by one. Let us say we do use this strategy even in our personal life many times. Our parents, sometimes our wife, ask us to get some vegetables, get some provisions from the stores. How do we do that? Let's say you are going to buy a rice bag, 25 kg rice bag. So how do you select the rice quality? Do you audit the complete pack of the rice bag, each and every rice grain in it? Is it possible? Highly impossible. So what you do is we just take a small sample because our objective is to predict how good the bag is, so that when I take that bag to my house, my wife or my mom do not scold me, right? And the food quality has to be good for the family. So what I do is I pick up a small sample from the rice bag and then try to judge the entire bag based on the sample. There are two things possible now. I take a sample and the sample seems to be bad, and so I may end up rejecting the complete bag. But the reality may be, the bag may be a good bag, the rice quality may be good, but the sample I took contained one stone, a small piece of stone. It came in my sample by chance. But the reality, truth is, there is only one stone in the entire bag. And that came to me when I take the sample. So what happened in your sample study is by a chance. And so I have decided to reject my bag, reject the lot. I have decided to purchase the rice from next outlet, not from that particular outlet. Now who is losing? Now absolutely the decision is wrong. You have rejected the bag, which is actually a good bag. So now the loss is to the supplier. We call this as manufacturer risk. Why the manufacturer is facing this problem? Because you are sampling, an error is made, isn't it? When you're sampling, you did a mistake. You committed a mistake. You have rejected a good product. This is manufacturer risk. Same thing, the dead opposite is also possible. Sometimes what we do is, we take a sample and then we also taste the rice. Rice tastes very good. And then there are no stones. So we feel extremely happy. So the sample is good, and so the entire bag should also be good. And so we buy the 25 kg bag or 75 kg bag to our house. But then the next day onwards, every day we are getting the scold. Why? What is this? The rice, the cooked rice is full of stones. Because what you tested is only on the top layer of the bag. The first 5 centimeter or 10 centimeter has been filled with high quality. Maybe these are certain strategies which generally the retailers follow, isn't it? And so because of which you failed in your sampling. And now the risk is for the consumer. You took a decision based on the sample, but your decision failed. You made a wrong decision. You have accepted a bad product because of your sampling error. This is called a consumer risk. In hypothesis testing, the manufacturer risk is called type 1 error, and consumer risk is called type 2 error. I will slightly modify. See here, the x-axis is your null hypothesis. Your x-axis is your null hypothesis, the climb, initial climb. The climb is true, but you have rejected it. The climb is true, you have rejected it. Similar to the case I said, your product is good, but you rejected it. This is called type 1 error. This is also called alpha. So please understand, you cannot run a sampling without committing these two errors. Definitely these two errors are possible, but to what extent you are okay with the error, that is the quality of your hypothesis testing. That decides the quality of your hypothesis testing. If you really wanted to have these error very, very less, then you have to tighten your sampling process. Don't just take a small sample. Take multiple samples. Take sample from every portion of the rice bag. Few from the top, few from the middle, few from the bottom. So you are reducing the risk. You are reducing the uncertainty involved in your sampling. So these errors, type 1 error, type 2 error, can be minimized by suitably designing your sampling method and going for an appropriate sample size. I repeat, sample size. That is very, very important, right? So before you decide to design your sampling, you must first admit how much amount of error is okay for you. Let's say I'm okay with 5% error. That means when I take 100 decision 100 times, 95% of the time I'll be correct. Or whatever decision I arrive, if I verify it, 95% of the time it will happen the same way I decided. But only 5% things can be different. That is the risk. This is what we call it as type 1 error. This is what we call it as manufacturer's risk. And what you decide to admit, the reality is type 1 error, reality is manufacturer risk. But what you admit, say 5%, that's what we call it as level of significance. Significance level. Generally, it is 5%. If you feel that your process is very critical, the product you are dealing is a critical product, very much sensible, you wanted to have highest level of quality in your decision, then you can make it 1% also. It's up to you finally. And accordingly, you have to design your sampling method. You will have to come out with a sample size. And then alpha can be 1%, can be 5%, can be 10%. Right? If alpha is fixed, the balance is called confidence level. Alpha is 5%. Then 100 minus 5% is 95%. 95% is your confidence level. What is confidence level? The null statement is true. And you have accepted it correctly. Very correctly you have accepted. You are able to rightly judge the product. A good product is accepted. A true null hypothesis is accepted. That is confidence level. How do I get this? 1 minus alpha. Alpha is 5%. So 95% is my confidence level. Similarly, type 2 error is beta. You should fix it. And beta is accepting a false statement. Your null is true. Sorry, your null is false. But still you believed in it. You accepted it. An error you are committing. That is beta. And the balance 1 minus beta is called the power of test. What is power of test? You correctly rejected a bad product. That is called the power of test. So without understanding these sampling risk and sampling errors and these uncertainties, designing the hypothesis testing will have no meaning. So that's why I thought you all should understand about the sampling risk and the sampling error, right? So I think all of you are able to follow my lecture. I just wanted to get a feedback and understand how good am I in delivering this stuff to you. If you feel that you are able to follow me, please type follow in the chat box. Accordingly, I will adjust my delivery. Maybe I can slow down or I can speed up. If you are able to follow, please type follow in the chat box so that I understand you are able to follow me.
Yeah, just another 15 minutes you will take. Therefore, please. Yeah, follow. Please follow. Follow,
Yes.
follow.
Yes, yes. No worries.
You can continue, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. So what is null hypothesis? Null hypothesis is nothing but the initial claim specified using the common knowledge available. Whenever you make a statement based on the common knowledge available about anything, that is null hypothesis. Mathematically, I can tell like this. It's a statement of innocence. It's a statement of no change. It's a statement of no difference. Consider our Indian judicial system, the court case room. The suspect is considered innocent unless it is proved. Then only he will be considered guilty. So the statement of innocence, we will have to believe everyone. Because whenever you do not have any data to prove someone is guilty, you will have to believe he is innocent. That type of statement is null hypothesis. Statement of no change, statement of no difference. It is to be assumed if you cannot prove otherwise. If you cannot prove the alternate hypothesis, the opposite of it, then believe in it. Stick to it. This is null. Then what is alternate? The exact opposite. You may believe to be true or hope to prove true. Whatever you wanted to prove true, that is called alternate hypothesis. This statement will be valid only if H0 is rejected. Only if H0 is rejected, alternate hypothesis is valid. It is also referred to as research hypothesis. So when we are doing the research work, what we did, the whole process is hypothesis testing. You initially make a research hypothesis and then to collect data and then you create evidence and finally you conclude about your hypothesis which you made, whether there is a significant improvement or not, based on certain suspected factors which are found to be critical, which you suspected that the factors are critical. Are they really critical or not? That is what the research is. That is how we all solve problems systematically. So this alternate hypothesis is otherwise called as research hypothesis. So now getting into the procedure of hypothesis testing. How do I conduct the hypothesis testing procedure? There are 6 steps in it. First step is develop H0 and H1. H1 sometimes called as HA. H0 is null, H1 is alternate. You need to write down based on the principles which I have explained. And then you select a test statistics. You select a test statistic. And then the third step is determine the significance level, which is alpha. And then determine the rejection criteria. And then calculate the sample statistics, because you have collected the sample, and calculate the sample statistics and compare your sample statistics with the client or the population. And then you decide. This is exactly the hypothesis testing procedure. I'll help you with the example. I am saying that, let us take Coimbatore city. People in the age group of 40 to 50 in Coimbatore are healthy. Their sugar levels are normal. It's a common knowledge. I believe you all will agree with me. It's a common knowledge. Generally, people are healthy. Unless we do some diagnosis and prove that we are not healthy, the alternate we accept. Otherwise, so it is a statement of common knowledge. People in Coimbatore, I defined my audience clearly. In the age group of 40 to 50 are healthy. In mathematically, I say FBS less than 100 milligram per deciliter. What is FBS? Fasting blood sugar. I am just considering the diabetes as the health condition. People are not diabetic. People are healthy. That is a null hypothesis. Now that selected test statistic, how do I conclude my decision? Based on fasting blood sugar. And then I admit I can have 5% type 1 error, which is level of significance. And determine the rejection criteria, because the people in the health field, they might be knowing if your fasting blood sugar level goes beyond 100 milligrams, then you will be declared a diabetic patient, isn't it? So the rejection criteria is that. And how do I get 100? There is a standard available. Similarly, there is a distribution called the standard distribution. You always compare your sample with the standard distribution and you take a decision. That is what is given here, rejection criteria. And calculated sample statistics. See here, in order to study the health of people in Coimbatore, what I did is, I selected a random sample of 100 people who are in the age group of 40 to 50. I do not go and select people from diabetes hospital, because no, then I will be biased, isn't it? You should not give room for bias. That's why I use the word random. You select random sample of 100 people in the age group of 40 to 50, and then this FBS is the test methodology. Collect their blood sample and then send it to the lab, and all 100 samples were tested and their results are obtained from the lab, and I calculate the average. The average is found to be 115.3. 115.3 is significantly different from 100, which is the standard. So my null statement is should be rejected. My calculated value is more than the standard value, and so I decide to reject my null hypothesis. So conclusion is people are not healthy. Right? So this is one case. There is another methodology by which you can conduct same hypothesis testing, because calculating the value, calculated value, and comparing it with the standard table, it's a laborious task. Nowadays, softwares are available, so alternate method has come, which is called p-value. Instead of for every event happening, there is a probability in this universe. Every event happening, I toss a coin. What is the probability that head happens? 0.5. What is the probability tail happens? 0.5. Isn't it? Similarly, I test a person for a diabetics condition. There is a probability that he can found to be a diabetic. So there is a probability in it, but there is a difference between the normal probability and probability of significance. What I mentioned here is probability of significance. That will require a lecture to understand what exactly is the difference, right? And so now the alternate method is almost the steps are same. You can see step number 3 is same, step number 4 is same, step number 5 is slightly different. Now I determine p-value. I do not calculate the statistics, but instead of calculating this sample statistics, I find out the p-value of it. But what is p-value? You will have to be patient for some time to understand. And then the p-value is compared with the level of significance. If p-value is less than alpha, go ahead and reject your null. Go ahead and reject your null. The factor is really critical. The factor is significant. The difference, what you see in your sample study, is really significant. Reject the null. If p-value is more than alpha, do not reject. So this is a simple difference. So same thing, same sequence goes, but now only difference is my decision is arrived not by comparing the calculated value and the standard value, but by comparing the p-value and alpha. P-value less than alpha leads to rejection of your null, right? So what you have understood now is, so far, is the decision rule using p-value at a 5% level of significance. If p-value is low, null will go. That is, you decide to reject your null. But if p-value is high, that is more than alpha, your null will stay with you. You decide to accept. Actually, we say don't reject, right? Not reject null. That means you are accepting the null. So p-value is the probability that random chance generated the data or something that is equal or rarer generated the data. In my rice example, I told the stone came by chance. What is the probability of stone coming in your sample just by chance? That is called the probability of significance. So that probability of significance should be compared with the probability of, level of significance. If p-value is less than alpha, that means factor is significant. Reject your null. If it is more than alpha, accept that. So what I wanted to do is, I would like to stop here, right? And then happy to take few questions from the audience, and then I will pass on the opportunity to the next speaker, right? And then I will continue with my presentation, right? So thank you for the opportunity given to me. So now I'm available for your questions. I will also look at your comments.
Thank you very much. Participants, you can ask the questions, unmute and you can ask, or you can write in the chat box, whatever way you feel like. They were asking for the PPTs.
Yeah, will be shared. The video will be shared with all of them, and then PPTs also. The next slides will be shared with you. Now I'm available for questions, and please understand that even now I have not explained how to conduct the assessment. That Dr. Ramakrishnan is going to do with some examples, and parallelly also be today how to do it manually, how to do it with softwares like MS Excel, softwares like Minitab can ease your job of performing the hypothesis testing. So we are going to do that. So if there are no questions, I think probably Dr. Ramakrishnan can start a little earlier also.
Last slide display once again. Last slide display once again. Padma Priya was asking.
Last slide. Okay, I need to start. Hey! Yeah, I will share.
Hello.
A minute. Is it visible?
No. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, slide is visible now.